let's move
Speaking
on.
of something that has no controversy whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We're talking Super Mario. Now, I do want to, before we dive into this, I want to do a quick little programming note in regards to this segment for Mario. I've seen the movie, and Mr. Family Man has seen the movie, but our brother Dre has not. So we're going to talk some box office first, and get into all the numbers and all that good stuff. After the box office talk, Dre's gonna dip out, and we're gonna talk about the movie itself and kind of review the movie and dive into the meat and potatoes of the film. So that's kind of how we're gonna do this segment. But Dre, if you want to set the table for box office, Super Mario Brothers.
Box office has been, I mean, just wild here. It's, I mean, we saw the initial estimates for the 3-day, and we were like, it's a little bit low. I think it's going to be a little bit higher than that. And we saw them revise even lower than that. It was like, that's kind of weird how they would kind of downplay this whole thing. Well, it opened April 5th for a 5-day weekend. That'll come crucially in a moment. But for its domestic haul, that is in North American territories, $204 million over that 5-day span for a global haul of $377 million. This is a huge movie, no matter how you slice it. But this is an absolute, I think, win for the Super Mario Brothers movie. Now, it does come with some nuance, however, and some people were kind of saying, "Well, wait a minute." Some people are calling this the highest, the biggest opening weekend for an animated movie ever, and it's like, well, hold on a second here. If we're comparing it to the predecessor for that title, Frozen 2 in 2019, that had a 3-day weekend, right? Where it, for its domestic haul, it made $130 million, and global took in $358 million for a 3-day compared to a 5-day. And interestingly, I was trying to find the comparisons between the both of them, right? And it's interesting. So the 3-day for Super Mario Brothers was about $319 million. So it's a little bit shy of that $358 million figure for Frozen 2. But here's the interesting thing, right? And if you dig into the numbers, it gets all kind of crazy, right? So this is the international performance for Frozen 2, right? And you can see there were big markets in China, Japan, South Korea, as you can see by the chart here. Well, UK, Mexico, all these things have something in common, though. They all premiered at the same time on that same weekend. So when you have that global figure being what it is at $358 million, you have to take into account that in all of these territories, it opened on the same weekend, whereas Super Mario Brothers didn't actually benefit from that. Interestingly enough, the largest, what is expected to be some of the largest territories where this will actually open, well, it hasn't even opened in. So Japan, for example, you'll see right here, zero, right? South Korea, for example, which is going to be a huge market, as you can see, 0. And it actually won't be hitting South Korea until April 26th. So this story hasn't been made just yet. So if you subtract some of those totals out from that global haul of Frozen 2, well, you get around $312 million, right? So kind of right in line with that $316 million figure that Super Mario Brothers actually had. And that's just it, too. There's some really interesting kind of developments here if you get deeper into the numbers. For example, China, for instance, right? It opened on April 5th, just with everybody else. But if you see right here, the number of screens was only about 10,000. If we compare that to just 4 years ago with Frozen 2, you see right here, 165,000, and that's the kind of disproportionate box office haul that you see right there, 54 million as compared to 11 million with Super Mario Brothers. So this is it's kind of an interesting thing playing out here. You know, this is not as apples and oranges as one might think.
No, it's not. And then Kyle brings up a great point too. Let's adjust the inflation numbers for Frozen 2 and Mario. I mean, inflation's gone through the roof since then.
Yep.
So I think that overall, for me personally, where I stand with this is that both of these films are wildly successful, and both of these films are making a shitload of money for their studios.
And let's talk about the shitload of money, right? Because I think that's very interesting. They are making a lot of money, but you know, in what proportions, right? So Frozen 2, for example, had a budget of $150 million, whereas Super Mario Brothers only had a budget of $100 million. So you might think, well, inflation aside, all those kind of numbers, they're raking in the cash far more just because they don't have that $50 million to contend with. But here's the key thing about that.
Right.
Super Mario Brothers is very unique in that it has a 50-50 deal straight right down the middle in terms of its investment and its revenue generation with Illumination as part of Universal and Nintendo. So when they take in that haul, well, you not only have to cut it down for the theaters and how much revenue that they take in, but you also have to cut it in half for Universal's portion of it. So even though you might think that they're making more money, in fact, they're not.
Yeah, no, that 50-50 split, which really caught me off guard, to be honest with you. That's a very high percentage. Nintendo is not playing. They are not playing at all. That was fascinating. But now Marty brings up a point here. I think we should address this. Hold on one sec. Let me move this. Marty says here, people talk about the 50-50 profit split with Nintendo. That's like saying Avatar won't make any money until Disney gets their $70 billion back from Fox. I think that's a little different though, Marty, because you're talking about, okay, if Universal bought Nintendo and they were like in debt, I think that's a little more apples to apples.
Yeah.
They just made a licensing deal with Universal. And quite frankly, it's extremely lopsided in Nintendo's favor. This is unusual how high of a percentage that they are getting in this.
Very much so. And this 50-50 split doesn't go away no matter how big this Nintendo shared universe actually gets, right? I think they are going to have a 50-50 split or something similar for all of these productions. That includes, you know, Zelda, Samus, all those kind of things that might actually be included. So yeah, that's don't like that comparison, but I see what you're saying. Michael Madsen, when people focus on making a good movie with an agenda, they do really well. Well, you know, during the review section of this actual topic right here, might have something to say about that.
Yeah.
So keep those comments flowing.
I get what you're saying, Michael, but it's not completely agenda free. We'll get into it when. Yeah. We'll get into it.
I want to show you something else too while we're in the box office segment of this.
Yeah.
The largest territory that Super Mario Bros. Actually opened to was Mexico with $28 million. Now, if we compare that just to 4 years ago, Mexico only contributed about $28 million during its entire run for Frozen 2. That kind of tells you just how big of a player Mexico has actually become for some of these feature films, and with, I guess here, Super Mario Brothers specifically. So that's kind of an interesting thing here that they've been able to match the entire run of Frozen 2 in such a short time frame for Super Mario Brothers, the movie.
Well, it is, and it's interesting too because Frozen has only had 2 movies. I mean, Frozen's only been around for a decade, right? It kind of shows you the power of Frozen in a lot of ways. You're talking about a movie here, Super Mario Brothers. You're talking about 4 decades of fans behind this thing, 4 decades, generations of people that grew up on this video game and these characters. Is basically playing about where Frozen 2 is. I know one has advantages, one, you know, at the end of the day, they're pretty much matched. That says a lot about Frozen. I mean, look, this has an advantage in terms of how many years behind it has, and Frozen in just a decade pretty much is pulling the same kind of box office numbers.
For now, remember,
For now,
got to
we'll
open
see.
up in some more territories, and we'll see just how
see.
wide this thing is. But it's interesting, you know. Frozen 2 actually topped out, I believe, about $1.4 billion, and I think VR just had a video on this saying that the Super Mario Brothers could eclipse that number of 1.5. I'm thinking it should if these numbers actually hold up, but well, we will see, right? And I would expect it to. I mean, you're talking about 40 years of kind of a multi-generational story that's actually taking place amongst audiences and so forth. It's going to be huge in Japan, huge in South Korea, maybe huge in China as more theaters open. It's kind of fascinating how all this is actually turning out. But hey, look, listen, I'm glad it's pulled in the box office haul that it has, because I think it really kind of proves that family films are viable, even with short windows. Remember, Super Mario Brothers, I think early next month, late this
Early
month,
May.
it will
Yep.
actually go to streaming. And still, people turned out multiple times, which is good to see.
Yeah, Michael here says, to be fair, the whole reason the movie is a hit is because of Nintendo. Absolutely.
Yes.
Nintendo
Yeah.
is the
Oh, yeah.
driving
Yeah.
force.
Yeah.
Kyle here says, is this going to be the last Illumination Nintendo movie since Nintendo bought an animation studio? Now, that's interesting, Kyle. Nintendo did buy an animation studio, but from what I understand, this is an ongoing deal now with Universal and Nintendo. There's rumors they're going to do a Zelda movie, which would be dope as shit if they did that. But they're wanting to do like a cinematic universe and I believe Universal is on board for all of those movies. But it does. But Kyle, you bring up a great point. Why did they buy the animation studio? That's kind of interesting.
Spin-off material, maybe.
Maybe.
I don't. It's an interesting arrangement right now, and Universal has already said we're excited to do more business with Nintendo. So we'll see how that actually plays out. But I mean, guys, you know, just looking at this kind of thing, right? If this, I mean, this movie has already done box office bank right here. If capitalized and actually done correctly with a sprawling kind of Nintendo verse, right? We might be looking at the birth of the most successful and greatest singular IP animation franchise that the world has ever seen. I think right now Toy Story is the number one dog in this arena right now.
And I think honestly, if they do pull that off, they will give Disney a run for their money.
I think so. I mean, this was thought unthinkable that an Illuminations film would actually compete on a level and at a scale like this before to, by some metrics, take the crown away from Disney as the largest opening for an animated film ever, and maybe the highest grossing animated film that we've ever seen. That really says something. I understand it's a split between Nintendo and all those kind of things right there, but I mean, this is something right here.
And Kyle mentions a Super Smash Brothers movie, perhaps. That's interesting because they can kind of take the format that they do for Marvel, like how they did with Infinity War and Endgame, and add that into as an animation quality where they all have their each individual films that lead up to one big gargantuous film, and that would be a smart move.
I think that's exactly where they're going, George. I think that's exactly where they're going. They want to not only present films with these characters in them, like Zelda or Metroid, but have them come together in kind of a Super Smash Brothers ultimate kind of combination film or crossover film. So that's what we have to look forward to on this front.
And Marty says 50% of something you didn't own is great. That's a fair point to make, but it's still a high percentage for most of these deals. They usually don't go that way, number one. But number two, also, Marty, this is one of the issues that I've been saying Universal has for a long time. They rent a lot of stuff, but they don't own a lot of stuff. The Universal, if they really want to be Disney's top contender, they got to start producing more in-house stuff. And stop borrowing from other studios, other entities as much as they do. They rely pretty heavily on that, and they got to get their in-house stuff in check. And I think they are. I think they are moving in that direction. I think they're moving in the right direction, absolutely. But with theme parks, all the big properties in their theme parks are rented. Harry Potter, Marvel, Nintendo. It's all borrowed stuff, right? They got to break out of that. They got to start making their own hits a little more than they do right now, I think. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's good to own everything in house, right? And sometimes that has been a limiting factor for Disney, right? For example, E.T., right? Steven Spielberg initially went to Disney to develop E.T., and it was like, I want to bring on my own guy for the for the score, John Williams, and it was like, nope, we do everything in house and we own everything in house, and it's like, well, it's not going to work for us, and they took that to Universal. So sometimes that is a limiting factor, but owning your own stuff comes with many advantages. And when you're looking at $1.4 billion and you're taking all of that back after giving the distributors and theaters what they own, it's a lot different than taking that back and splitting it by half. So
we'll see. Yeah, and one more thing before Dre ducks out. Marty Snyder says, "Yep, they need WB." I'm telling you, Marty, if Universal Comcast manages it on God's green earth, I don't know how this deal would get approved right now with the environment, with the regulatory situation. It would be hard, okay, to be honest. But if Comcast can pull that deal off and buy Warner Brothers, the game has freaking changed. Look, I've said it many times on this channel. I think the Epic Universe factor is so overblown with the theme park community, out of control. This thing is like, people are saying this thing is going to change everything and yada yada. I'm saying no, it's probably not going to do that. It's probably going to cannibalize more of Universal's parks than affect Disney in any way. I've been saying that consistently, and I've been on an island,
especially the studio part.
Right. Exactly. But I'll tell you right now, if Universal manages to snatch Warner Brothers, that is serious stuff for Disney. That is major. Because now you have a company like Universal who's hungry, and now they have Looney Tunes, DC, Harry Potter, all this stuff. Then you get worried. If you're Disney, then you get worried.
It's a content repository that's been relevant and has been built over decades. That changes the game significantly. But yeah. I will go ahead, hand it off to these fine gentlemen so that they can have their review segment. I do appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely.
If anybody wants to see me, you can go ahead and do so right down there at Vash Sky. Just go ahead and type that in, and it should pop up for, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55, where we have some amazing shows like the one you're watching right now with Orange Grove 55 and OrangeNerd, hosted by the amazing person on my left right here. Citrus Corner, which we dive into everything Walt Disney World related, hosted by the amazing person below me right now. Story Geeks with Jay, where we are right now covering every single episode of Mandalorian as it comes out. And this last one was a doozy. You're definitely going to want to tune in for that. And my own Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
And Dre, I just want to say, once you see the movie, we'll do a video with you in it, reviewing it, because I'm really curious about your thoughts. Absolutely.
Yeah,
go ahead, George.
I was actually just going to took the words right out of my mouth. We'll definitely come back to this once you see the movie. Just so you know, brother, you will be missed for this final segment, but definitely looking forward to hearing your thoughts when you do see the film.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. I cannot wait. Until then, later. We will see you then.
All right, chat. Let's go ahead and talk about this movie. Out the gate, I got to be honest, right? Like, I've made no bones about it on the channel many, many times. I'm not an Illuminations fan. I'm just not. I'm not into the Minions. A lot of their movies are just kind of like, they're kind of kiddie movies. I got to be real. Like, if I had kids, maybe I'd be like, okay, these are okay to sit through for my kid, but I don't have kids, and I just don't find much pleasure in their brand. Okay. So going into this movie, I was like, with that mindset, oh gosh, it's an Illumination movie, right? I see the movie and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love this movie. I thought it was a love letter to Nintendo, but mostly a love letter to the Super Mario Brothers franchise. I thought they did a really good job. It was just the right amount of time, too. It was an hour and a half. That's all you really needed for something like this. Yes, the story wasn't really deep. It was very surface level. But that's all you really need for a Mario Brothers movie. That's all you really need. Now, look, if they do a Zelda movie, that's a whole nother conversation. For Zelda, you need to dive deep into the lore. You need to do a little deeper of a story for something like that. Maybe even a trilogy for Zelda and really go deep. But for Mario, you don't need to do that. So I thought it was just the right amount of story. I thought the animation was absolutely gorgeous. Everything that we saw in this movie was so on model to what we're used to as how we see the characters, right? In the games and what have you. It was so on model, so perfectly well done. I love the deep cuts, like the Super Mario Brothers rap at the beginning of the film. Look, I'm an older guy. I'm in my early 40s, and there was the Super Mario Brothers Super Show when I was a kid on Fox. And I used to watch that show all the time. The fact that they incorporated that theme song into this movie, I thought was really, really awesome. And it plays to what I'm saying. It's a love letter to the franchise throughout the entire movie. Now, is the movie perfect? Absolutely not. One of my big issues with the movie is Peach, in my opinion. Because Peach, yeah, look, you could tell. And this is where I kind of, when you said there's no agenda, this is where I kind of respectfully disagree. The Peach thing, you can tell they wanted her to go full girl boss, like Peach Skywalker kind of situation, and they pulled back. Maybe the pullback was because of Nintendo and their input. I don't really know. But that was definitely a thing. And that's something that Disney gets a lot of shit for. These kind of female characters, these kind of badass can't beat them kind of characters. And I saw a lot of that kind of in this character in this movie. So when I see people say, well, there's no agenda or this movie is completely not woke, it kind of is. At least her character was, in my opinion. But overall, I'm not crapping on this movie at all. I absolutely love this movie. I give it a solid A. I had a blast watching this movie. George, what are your thoughts?
So my experience with this film out of the gate was a little bit different than yours. I had seen the movie with my 13-year-old son, which we both were and still are huge fans of Mario. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. You know, we had the Super NES and the Sega, and I mean, Super Mario wasn't. Well, yeah, certain aspects of it was on Sega, but I had all those classic consoles and everything. So I was very interested in this film, but even with my son, we both were a little bit hesitant on going into this because Josh is a big component of saying that they never get video games right for film.
Oh, he's right.
And I agree with him on that. I mean, they're absolutely right. It's a hit or miss, and it's always a miss. So I think my problem that I did to myself, I went into this already leaning towards that I wasn't going to like it because I'm just like with you, OG. I'm not a huge Illuminations fan. So automatically I'm thinking, okay, Despicable Me, Minions, like it was like I had that tunnel vision. And I think that's where it kind of it spoiled it for me. So when I seen it the first time, I was not a fan of this. I remember jumping on a private DM with the guys, and actually some of you who are part of the chat right now, and I thought it was kind of funny that I said I seen the movie, and I out of sheer ignorance put my phone down, and then I look at my phone and everyone's like blowing up the chat. George just ghosted us. We didn't even get a response of what the movie was. I thought that was kind of funny, but I was not a fan of the film. It felt a little bit rushed to me, which I do understand for a movie based off of Super Mario Brothers. It can't be super long, but it felt like the storyline just felt a little bit rushed for me. Definitely the components with Peach was a huge, like I noticed that right off the bat. And it's like, if you're going to base it off of a video game, I'm sorry, Peach is supposed to be the damsel in distress. She gets kidnapped by Bowser. Mario has to be the hero. I would have rather, if Mario was supposed to have a little bit of a weaker side to him, I would have rather it been the Toads that taught him how to finagle through the warp pipes and what have you, not Peach. I would have rather be where he briefly encounters with Peach, but is kidnapped by Bowser, and kind of have Luigi by his side, because it's almost like they made Luigi become the scaredy cat, which I get it. It paid homage to Luigi's Mansion, which I did enjoy that. But don't incorporate the whole character arc of Luigi of being this kind of bent, frail sort of character until the very end. Like, I wanted to see more characterization of Luigi and how his relationship is with Mario teaming up, because when you play that classic game, you kind of have like that tag team duo, and you only get that at the very end. I wanted to see that throughout the movie.
That's a fair point. That's a fair criticism. You don't see much of the Mario Luigi action together with the two of them. Now, here's the other thing too I wanted to bring up, because I think I want to be fair. I want to be completely fair with the Peach girl boss stuff. It definitely was girl boss, and it definitely was what people would call woke. I definitely was there. But here's the other thing too. To be fair to Nintendo and Illumination, Super Mario Brothers. Well, the first one, yeah, Mario, you had to save the princess. The second game, though, in the 80s or early 90s, she was a playable character. She was a playable character.
That is true.
So I mean, I guess you can kind of say, okay.
I think it was more so. I think it was more of the dominating of Mario.
Right. And she did that quite a bit in this.
Yeah, I think that was the thing where I think if they would have made it more like of a team effort, if they was to go that route, but kind of make Mario still be the head leader, sort of speak. That would have proclaimed more towards the game. Now, I do have to say, I did see this a second time.
Okay.
The second time, because I thought, you know what, I'm going to go into this theater with a little more optimism to try to find, because I do agree with you, the animation is breathtaking. It fits so well, like with the whole gameplay of the classic video games, and even to the Super Nintendo world at Universal, it fits so well. So I went into this theater saying, okay, I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm really going to focus on it. And the second time around, it was not as bad as the first time. Do I still find issues with it? Yes, obviously. But I gained a little bit more of appreciation of what they were trying to do with it after seeing it a second time around. And I actually do agree with Marty. Jack Black was phenomenal as Bowser Koopa. I mean, I think the way that he portrayed the character, it was a threat, but nothing too overpowering. And I do like how they kind of paid homage to the Mario Odyssey game, where they had like the wedding outfits between Koopa and Peach. And then even at the very beginning, where Mario's playing like that classic pixel video game in his room, I love how that just screamed like of how the game actually was in correlation back in the 80s and 90s.
Well, and a little fun fact, the game that Mario was playing in the beginning was Kid Icarus. And I absolutely loved that game as a kid, Kid Icarus. It was a dope game. And that's what I'm saying when I was saying like that this movie really was a love letter to like Nintendo. It really was. It was something really special. Jack Black was amazing. I completely agree. Another thing that I really thought was kind of clever was how they incorporated Donkey Kong. And they had like all the toads and the princess around that big planning like war room table. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about, well, we got to negotiate with the Kongs, right? We got to, and it reminded me something that you would see like in House of Dragon or something. Like, this is hilarious, absolutely hilarious. So I love that. I thought that was really, really, really clever. Let me see here.
That was actually my favorite scene, like as far as like integrated within the film.
Yeah, it was really clever. And Marty here says the Donkey Kong rap and DK entrance had me rolling. Me too. That was really funny. That was some funny stuff, dude. It was a fun movie. It was, and the thing I like about it too is like it's very to kind of relate it to video games. Like when it comes to video games or gaming in general, I don't like a lot of games that I have to like really like not work at, but like overly complex games. Like when I'm gaming, I don't want to be stressed out. I want to just pick something up and it's like a stress reliever. So a lot of games that I'm into are like the old school NES games or like Angry Birds and things like that. This movie feels like the game, the original game in a lot of ways, where you pick it up and watch it. There's not a whole lot involved in it. It's just a very easy to watch kind of entertainment for an hour and a half. Yeah, I thought that was a great element of it. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I think that this is, well, I know it's, I mean, we just talked about it. The box office is very much successful. It's doing bonkers business. So I'm sure we're going to see a ton of sequels and other characters incorporated into this universe.
Well,
I'm excited to see what they do with it.
And especially at the very end with the little extra after credit scene where they show the dino egg cracking open, which we all know who that is. That's everyone's favorite green dinosaur, Yoshi. So it's basically them telling us, we're not stopping with this film. They are so heavily relying on this film being so successful,
right?
Which obviously it is.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they kind of banked for their buck on that one, that they already implemented, okay, we're going to have a sequel for this. And here's a little treat for you to say, here's what you have to look forward to.
Well, yeah, and you have something here where we have the superhero cinematic universes with the MCU and DC, right? You have basically a cinematic universe with Star Wars as well, right? Mm-hmm. This is something that now Universal and Nintendo are going to do something very different, but very much similar to what you see with the MCU and Star Wars, where they're taking video games now, Nintendo games, and building out that overall universe. And they can do just the same thing that Marvel does with it. They can do movies. If Comcast ends up getting Hulu, they can do shows based on Nintendo games. The sky is the absolute limit, right? And right now, in a world where people are arguing that maybe there's a little bit of superhero fatigue with these superhero movies, maybe this is the perfect time for a video game cinematic universe to kind of step in and fill that void. So it's big money for both of these companies, Universal and Nintendo. And it's very interesting where they can possibly go with this stuff. The biggest thing for me would be Zelda. I think that would be just incredible. And a Zelda movie could be possibly like Universal's answer to like the Disney fairy tale almost, with all the magic and lore. That could be kind of their fairy tale franchise almost.
I always kind of took Zelda as it being like an animated video game before like the Lord of the Rings, sort of kind of like having that kind of lore, like with the elves and in the kingdom and what have you. So I could definitely see Universal taking that route on top of even with Illuminations. And I think because we touched upon it a little earlier that, not really knowing why they would, create another animation studio. But I feel like based on the ending of how Super Mario Brothers was with Illuminations plans on to continue the Super Nintendo franchises within Illuminations. And I think that's where it's going to tie in more with Universal, because they already, Illuminations and Universal kind of tie in together already. So it's basically a win-win for both companies.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, big congratulations to both Universal and Nintendo for this huge success. We can all quibble on Twitter about which movie made more, Frozen 2 or Mario. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because Frozen 2 made a shitload of money and Mario is making a shitload of money. And at the end of the day, it's a shitload of money. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Yep. This is a huge win for Universal, and much kudos to them for it.
Basically, they're all shitting their pants right to the bank.
Yeah, exactly.